Right, so following the defection of hard-right Tory MP Natalie Elphicke to the Labour Party, there seems to be no limits to how awful a Tory you could possibly be with the track record that comes with that would preclude you from being allowed to join Keir Starmer's new Tory Party. We can hardly call it New Labour, can we? They've done that already. Or even New Labour, when they aren't so much getting the Tories out, but letting them in with a warm welcome instead. So I think New Tory Party is far more fitting. That said, however, the old Tory Party, as it were, or at least some in it, remain critical of Labour and not only have criticised them, but done so in a way that's actually put themselves to the left of Labour. And one MP that's done it might mean you have to have a sit down. Suella Braverman has raised her head above the parapet to apparently criticise Labour over their decision to retain the cruel poverty-inflicting two-child benefit cap her party had reduced. It was her party that brought it in. But rather than ditch it, Labour has chosen to keep it. And not only have Labour decided to keep it, but Wes Streeting, Keir Starmer's health minion, and a glazed ham of a man about as likeable as a dose of the clap, and good luck being able to see a doctor about that once he's in charge, you'll probably have to go private, has defended keeping the cap, placing himself and Labour to the right of the Tories, to the right of Suella Braverman, on social security, as cruel as we know they have been to benefit claimants, the long-term sick and the disabled. Right, so when it comes to just how obviously horrible the Labour Party now is, one prominent wannabe minister who seemingly cannot resist reminding people of what a nasty piece of work he can be, and loves nothing less than an opportunity to go on TV or run to the mainstream media at any opportunity to big himself up, is Wes Streeting. But to do so in a manner that now puts himself to the right of a hard-right maniac like Suella Braverman is an achievement even for him. Yet he's just managed it. For as god-awful a human being as Suella Braverman is, her depravity over migrant crossings, her dreams of deporting asylum seekers to an unsafe African nation, no matter what the Tories write into law, the truth rarely factors in. It certainly didn't there. She has, however, made a surprising intervention when it comes to benefits. Now, you can dismiss this as her making mischief. Certainly wouldn't make me vote for her any more than it might you. She doesn't mean it, you might think. Look at the Tories' track record on such things. I totally hear you. If you've read my YouTube video descriptions, if you're a regular watcher of my channel, then you know I'm an unpaid carer. I've lived within the social security system due to being a carer for two disabled family members. I've experienced firsthand the cruelty the Tories have dished out, the lies they've said about families like mine, and my family consider themselves survivors of that, given that so many people have not survived it. So it does leave a sour taste in my mouth to actually acknowledge what Suella Braverman, of all people here, is saying about the two-child benefit cap. Because what she has said in an article in the Tory Graph, I don't entirely disagree with. Much of the article eulogises the recently deceased Labour MP Frank Field, who she hailed for his work on benefits, though despite being brought up to not speak ill of the dead, Frank Field was anything but. He was fully on board with the belief that benefits are a lifestyle choice. But like many politicians who say that, they've never had to try living on them either. And Braverman underlines that by saying Field probably would have agreed with the reforms the Tories have brought in. I would like to think that isn't true. Tory benefit reforms have killed people, and sticking with them, Labour will oversee more of the same. But the crux of this video, the point I want to make, is that despite hailing what her party has done on benefits, Braverman has put the boot into the two-child benefit cap. Capping child benefits, whether the premiums via universal credit, or the likes of child benefit and child tax credits under the old legacy system, to the first two children only, meaning any more children that the family might have are left impoverished in effect. Now, you can argue that the family, well, they shouldn't have had any more kids than they could possibly afford. I'm sure there will be many puffing, red-faced people out there thinking just that. That isn't really the point, though, is it? Why punish the child, after all? Is it the child's fault it was born? Is it the parents' fault as well? Look at it another way. When the Tories have screwed up the running of this country so much, the work increasingly hasn't paid enough, and more people who might have been keeping their heads above water, who have a large family once upon a time, now might find they're no longer able to. The whole point of the two-child benefit cap, as it was introduced by Mr. Austerity George Osborne, was to force people living on benefits, who were all shirkers, as that Tory government painted them, shirkers versus workers, they were all the same, all shirkers, as having to make the same choices in having a family as working families did. Everyone's struggling, so let's just make the poorest and disproportionately large families containing long-term sick and disabled people even harder up then. That'll get them into work, won't it? That was their thinking, that was their mantra. Well, it didn't work if you were disabled. Once upon a time there was a thing called Remploy, some of you might recall it. That helped disabled people find work they could do, created opportunities for them to do it. This was scrapped by the Tories, and they've been failed as a demographic ever since. Little wonder the Tories have been accused of trying to kill such people off under their rule, and not without some good reason either. But the fact is, it didn't help larger families back into work. Having less money meant no childcare. Less money meant poverty increased without the ability to be able to go to work. So it has been a cruel, abject failure. And as much as the cruelty of the policy I don't believe has moved someone like Braverman one iota, failure and wasting public money in her eyes, well, that won't do at all, will it? Benefit freezes and additional cruel policies like this have left those with the least unable to afford to get by. So now even she, Suella Braverman, little miss, let's put migrants on a Legionella-filled prison barge, is acknowledging that the benefit reforms of George Osborne, at least in regard to this benefit cap, are a failure. Someone who disagrees with her, however, is Labour's Wes Streeting, who is all for keeping it. Vote Labour to get the Tories out, folks. I would remind you once again, really isn't true. And as I've also said previously, Labour under Starmer, with sociopaths like Streeting in government, could well be even worse. This is a sociopathic policy, it always has been, so why would Labour keep it? They were all for scrapping it at one point, but that was another Starmer pledge he never meant, wasn't it? He doesn't keep them. And now it is just one more example of where there is literally no difference between Labour and the Tories, Braverman aside. So I fail to see why any sick or disabled person looking at this story, knowing what life has been like under the Tories, would want to vote Labour now, because there is nothing here to vote for if you're in that boat, in my view. Please tell me if you think I'm wrong. Demonstrate it. Point it out, because I really don't see it. So what Streeting said then, Damo? Well, just to ice this particularly rancid shit sandwich of a Labour policy position a bit further, Streeting acknowledged poverty amongst the worst off was so bad, and the fear of the benefit itself was so severe, and what it meant, if someone fell pregnant with their third child, that there has been a rise in directly related abortions. Well, that seems like a very good reason to end the two-child benefit cap then, eh, Wes? Apparently not. Because seemingly in his next breath, when asked about that, he defended keeping the cap because Labour don't want to be seen to be giving out handouts. So you don't actually care if the abortions continue then. Handouts? Many people who are in receipt of Social Security are in work. Streeting is a guy who makes much of having been raised by a single mother on a council estate and how much he hated it. But instead of appreciating the politics of what caused that, what led to that, he's embracing it instead. Thatcherism continues under Starmer. He appears to have put just as much distance between himself and that memory as he possibly could, to an extent that he doesn't actually give a damn anymore about people growing up in the same or worse circumstances that he did, because he's all right now. That's how this comes across to me, and it now puts Labour benefit policy to the right of somebody like Suella Braverman. Here's an excerpt from The Independent, who interviewed Streeting on this. He said, "I think that the answer on child poverty is all about social security. Of course that's part of it. I grew up on a council estate with a single mum, and often the benefit system put food in the fridge and money in the electric meter. I am a product of a welfare state that quite literally fed me and housed me and clothed me at points in my life." However, he went on, "I also know that the answer to child poverty ultimately is not simply about handouts. It is about a social security safety net that also acts as a springboard that helps people into work, and with good work that makes the cost of living affordable for everyone. That means that if you aren't doing the right thing and earning a living and playing by the rules, that you don't just have enough to make ends meet, but you have enough to do the things that make life worth living, and we're some way from that now." He also repeated the message that the state of public debt and lack of money will tie Labour's hands. Pulling the ladder up behind you as fast as you possibly can, eh, young Wesley? It's the same old Tory excuses. There's no money left. The Tories have trashed the public finances. We can't just print money and hand it out to people. Just knows what they'll be spending it on. Is that going to be the next line you come out with? That's what the Tories did, isn't it? Despite acknowledging his own upbringing, he also, by his own admission there, says there should be no handouts and people should do the right thing and help people into work. Not everyone can work. How you treat them is how society should be judged and will be. It isn't even true that there is no money left. It's just that Labour won't spend, because that would require more tax, and with the tax burden on ordinary working class people already too high, that would mean taxing wealth, which means taxing donors, and that's why Rachel Reeves won't do it. The new Tory Party, of the rich for the rich, just like the old one, when they are supposed to be for the ordinary working class. Labour is the name still, after all, but there's nothing Labour about them. Streeting is rancid, his views are rancid, his attitude is rancid, his opinion on benefits so right-wing, so very rancid. But equally, this guy is coming for the NHS next, plans to privatise more of it, good little Tory boy that he is, and wrote in the Murdoch scum, no less, that anyone opposed to his plans are a bunch of rotten middle-class lefties. Weirdly, it's working-class people most at risk of not being able to afford healthcare. Wesley. Find out all about that in this video recommendation here, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.